friends, people I never knew, people I never thought about associating with. I don't know what it is. Talk to me. Check it out. 85 acres with a mansion on my land. Full jacuzzis and my neighbors can't stand the way I live. This zone so fast. Ain't got your ladies and primetime is all that.
Whoa, Dion. It's not that kind of primetime.
Yeah, man, it's primetime fantasy football on Next Level Radio.
Well, alright. Yeah.
Welcome to another live episode, unless you're podcasting us, another podcasted episode of Primetime Fantasy Football here on Next Level Radio. I am Adam Gorey, joined by Steve Richards yet again, this time not calling from the Poconos.
No, I'm back to my local spot, so another thunderstorm. It always seems to rain on Wednesdays, so if you lose me, that's why.
Yeah,
I've been electrocuted.
It just passed us, and I'm actually pretty surprised I did not lose power, so I dodged a bullet. Let's see if Steve can dodge a bullet as well. So,
Flexico Bears.
Steve, let's talk a little bit real quick. I just want to mention about your blog that you're posting our podcasts on.
Yeah, my personal blog is at stevenrichards.net. You can head over there. I throw up all of the podcasts that we do. This is the week I'm actually catching up. So it actually works out that this will be our 5th podcast, and there's 5 days in the work week. So I'm doing one a day, just recapping our 5 podcasts that we will have, and doing a little bit of a recap and embedding the YouTube video. There's a bunch of links on there. You can connect with us on Facebook and Twitter and Google+. You can even tweet about our episodes and raise some awareness if you like the episodes. And it's just another place to give us feedback and comments, because we're always looking for that and trying to get better every week. So it's definitely a place to go where you can check out all of our shows.
I like it. I'm on board with that. So anyway, let's get right into business, because as usual, we have a packed show for you tonight. Tonight's our NFC West spotlight, but first we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on in the news today and just this week in general. First off, Tavon Austin, it came out today or earlier yesterday, that he apparently last year did not know the Rams playbook, and you could kind of tell on the field there. As a rookie, he said it looked like everything looked Spanish and sounded like Spanish to him. Apparently, he now claims to have the system down pat. We'll see if that remains to be true, but I do expect him to have a better role this season than he did last season. I know towards the end of the year he did pretty well, didn't he?
Yeah, he had a game where he had like 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. He had essentially all of his production in that one game for the entire season. But he's got potential. There's a reason that they drafted him 8th overall. I think he was definitely top 10. I'm pretty sure 8th was the spot. There's definitely a receiver spot open on the Rams depth chart. So if he's the one that can break through, he might be more in the slot mold, but he could be a go-to type guy for Sam Bradford, and that's always the case with second-year guys. Get another year to learn the playbook type thing.
Yeah, exactly. And you're correct. He was 8th overall in 2013. Yeah. And we'll talk a little bit more about him when we get into our NFC West spotlight. I probably could have bypassed that story, I guess.
Just a precursor.
Apparently, Reggie Wayne is ready for camp. He is past the physical and has been cleared for camp, which is a good sign for a guy coming off an ACL tear. As you know, I'm not the highest on Reggie Wayne, but the fact that he's already been cleared is a good sign, at least.
Yeah, for sure. I would agree with that 100%. And the faster that he can get on the field, the faster that he can be ready to go. He certainly came in style. I saw on SportsCenter that he came in on some kind of IndyCar race car thing. I think he's known for coming in a flashy way. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Now that he's back, I guess he's ready to roll in full stride, which would be a good thing for him and Andrew Luck and everybody in Indianapolis, really.
Yeah, it definitely helps.
Back to where he was.
Definitely helps his value, and I know we said it when we did our AFC South spotlight a couple weeks ago. But now that he's already back, I think you'll see his ADP creep up a little bit, and if you can still get him in those later rounds, it might not be a bad idea because as we saw, I guess Andrew Luck's rookie year, not as much last year because he got hurt halfway through the season, but Andrew Luck's rookie year, he kind of had a resurgence with the new quarterback. So possibility of that happening again this year.
Yeah, this is kind of you and I have been on opposite sides of the fence kind of every time Reggie Wayne comes up.
I think I might be coming around a little bit. A little bit.
And the last time we talked about this, I was a little bit higher on Hakeem Nicks, and I think I've just gotten smarter, or I'm just not in the mood for it right now. But I'm not into Hakeem Nicks right at this moment.
Yeah,
so
definitely to create. If we were doing Bull or Bear, Hakeem Nicks would be a bear at this point, which is not
sure,
good.
Absolutely.
Moving on to another guy with an ACL tear who's been cleared by doctors and not being placed on the PUP list would be Rob Gronkowski. He's only 7.5 months from blowing out his knee. So that is a really quick turnaround. And that, I don't know if it scares me or if I'm impressed. I don't know which way.
Gronk no feel pain. Gronk want football.
Gronk want play. Gronk wants spike ball.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I would love. I still think he's the second best tight end in the league. I see a lot of people leaning towards taking Julius Thomas over Gronkowski. The fact that Gronkowski's already been cleared and it, all signs point to him being ready for week one. That moves him for me to tight end, second best tight end in the league, in my opinion at least. I know a lot of people are kind of on opposite ends. Jimmy Graham obviously being first.
Of course, absolutely. Yeah, it's Jimmy Graham and everybody else at this point with Gronkowski being hurt. But if Gronkowski is Gronkowski of old, it's Jimmy Graham and Gronkowski and everybody else. Cause,
yeah.
I don't know. You got to prove to me that Julius Thomas can do it more than 1 year. I'm sure he's a good player, but and Peyton Manning doesn't hurt. But I just, like you said, Gronkowski healthy and Gronkowski being the old Gronkowski is exactly who I would want on my team at tight end. It's just he's the strongest human I've ever seen that gets hurt a lot.
He's only 25. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And exactly. Julius Thomas, by the way, did not play all 16 games last year. He only played 14. So everybody worried about Gronk's injuries. Last year Gronk only played 7 games because he came in like halfway through the season and then blew out his knee later on.
Yeah.
But in half the amount of games, Gronkowski had just 27 less receptions. And let's see, he had 8 less touchdowns. Julius Thomas did have 12 touchdowns last year, but just in those 7 games, Gronk had 4. But if you go back to 2012, even though he only played 11, he had 11 touchdowns. The guy averages like a touchdown a game. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm looking at some stats here that he has 42 touchdowns in 50 career games, which is, like you said, pretty close to a touchdown a game, especially for a tight end. Those numbers are ridiculous. And he was on pace for 1,350 yards last year with a full season. So the production is certainly there when he's on the field. It's just about being on the field. And we talk about sleepers. This is a guy who could be an absolute steal if he ends up being healthy for 16 games and you end up getting him in the later rounds because everybody else is afraid he's going to get hurt again.
Yeah, so. Like I said, there's a lot of depth around, and when you're going in if it's a 15 round draft, when you're hitting the 12th and 13th round, you're not drafting starters anyway, so you might as well just get a backup tight end that's still hanging around, maybe a guy that slipped through the cracks, like a Zach Ertz or something like that. Because we'll get to it when we talk about NFC East in a couple weeks, but I think Zach Ertz is in for a very nice season and a much expanded role in this offense, and I don't think he's being drafted in a lot of leagues.
Yeah, I don't know how low he's being drafted. Like you said, we haven't focused completely on the NFC East yet, but if you can get somebody like him late, or Kyle Rudolph will be on the rise this year as an emerging tight end as well.
Yeah, I think Rudolph. Everybody's
somebody like that.
Yeah, everybody's buying into that Rudolph hype. I think he's going probably like 6th maybe among tight ends. Seemed like
he's starting to fly then.
Yeah.
When we did the preview, I had it as a sleeper. He wasn't going that high, but
when we do our mock breakdown,
to go off the shelves there.
Yeah, we'll have to take a look when we do our mock breakdown. But let me just check Because I just want to real quick look at where Ertz is going, because he might not even be. Let's see. Let me just look at some guys who are going in the later rounds. I mean, you got Jordan Reed's going in like the 11th round. People are still drafting Tony Gonzalez. Let's see. Antonio Gates is going in the 13th round. These are if you're in a 10-team league. Ebron's going in the 13th round. Tyler Eifert's kind of fallen off the earth. I mean, what happened? He had a good year last year. He's going in the 14th round.
Yeah. Yeah, he's just, I mean, sometimes people just forget about tight ends because they play the tight end position, but Tyler Eifert is definitely, he's another giant person who can go up and get the ball, one of those basketball player type bodies that can go up and get a ball in the red zone. And like you said, we're talking about backups for Gronkowski. If you take the shot on Gronkowski, then Eifert is certainly a serviceable backup for that if Gronkowski ends up banged up again this year.
Ertz is going about the 11th round, so a little bit higher than other people. But I mean, looking at this list, at least this is per Yahoo ADP, so I mean, I don't know how accurate it is, but Dwayne Allen and Kobe Fleener are almost undrafted. They're going in the 14th round, 14th and 15th round. So, I mean, even if you take, if you are solidified at your other positions and you want to take Kobe Fleener or Dwayne Allen or Zach Ertz or whoever else we mentioned, it's not a bad idea. I actually would take the shot on Gronk if he was there in like the 3rd round or so, because like you said, if you're getting him for 12 games, say he misses 4 games and plus the bye, so you need someone for 5 weeks. When he's playing in those 12 games, you're going to get a tight end that probably scored second, if not highest, amongst tight ends that week.
Yeah, that's what he's known as when he's on the field. The injuries have never slowed him.
Yeah.
Other than the fact that he hasn't been on the field. If he's on the field, he's productive. He just has to get on the field.
Yeah, I'm a huge Gronkowski fan, if you couldn't tell. Yeah, and he was on my team last year, and I only had him for 7 games, and I'm still a big fan of him. So that shows you right there. Let's move on.
Absolutely.
Jamaal Charles with the shortest holdout in NFL history. Literally, when I was preparing this morning for the show, I added on here that Jamaal Charles was in a holdout, and by the time the show came around, he is no longer in the holdout. He signed a 2-year, $18 million contract extension. So, when he was in the holdout, maybe that worries people because if he misses camp, sometimes guys miss camp and come off a little rusty. Well, now you don't have to worry about it. So, and I'll show you my mock draft later because I did the mock draft today after that news came out. With the 4th pick, and spoiler alert, Jamaal Charles dropped to the 4th pick. So that shows you how much that scared people.
Yeah, did you say that he got $18 million? Is that what you were?
Yeah,
I didn't see the numbers.
That was his extension. Yeah, 2 years, $18 mil.
Yeah, so he essentially made $36 million an hour if you go ahead, because the holdout lasted about a half hour. So
there you go.
It was it might productive half hour. For
it might be 18 for both years. I'm not sure.
Oh, okay.
But either way, that's because I think it's $9 mil a year. 18 mil a year would be a lot. I think it's more. I think AP makes like 12 mil.
Yeah.
So moving on, this has been a slowly rising topic with Terrence West. He will practice on Friday, but let me see. The story that I wanted to look at earlier today was that him and Ben Tate are apparently the coach Mike Pettin is talking about a Ben Tate Terrence West running back battle, and he said it might be the best competition of training camp.
Yeah, I don't know if he's trying to light a fire under Ben Tate's ass or if he truly believes this, but Pettin is certainly a defensive guy, and defensive guys generally like that ground and pound, run the football type. So if he says that he likes a running back and the way a running back looks, he's good for his word, I would think. So it'll be definitely something to monitor, and it'll be something interesting to watch. But this certainly puts a huge dent into Ben Tate, who a lot of people had a high value on. So this is certainly something to monitor as the month goes.
And this is why you don't do your fantasy draft before training camp starts, because there's always stories that come out, training camp battles, and you never know who it's going to be. I mean, Ben Tate's a guy a few months ago you're thinking, yeah, he's the solid number 1 there. now you're kind of just staring at, I was putting him on the same line as a Toby Gerhart. Two guys who produced as a backup role, moved into a spot that they could be the guy. But now actually I'm going to put Toby Gerhart above Ben Tate with Terrence West.
Absolutely. No, I would 100% agree with that. Anybody that's looking to split carries or maybe not even come out of training camp with the number one job is certainly somebody to shy away from. And like you said, it's why you do your draft as late as possible. So
yeah,
if you're the commissioner or if you're even a player in the league, demand the draft as late as possible.
Ben Tate currently going in about the 10th round if you're in a 10-team lead. West going in about the 13th round. So I would be inclined to pass on Tate and wait till the 13th round and take West, because that could be the steal of the century right there, especially in a keeper league.
Absolutely.
So last one, a little bit of Giants running back talk. David Wilson earlier this week was cleared, and according to his Twitter, he was cleared for everything. So I guess he can go skydiving, rock climbing, running with the Bulls, all that kind of stuff. But today he did open camp as the second team running back. So honestly, I was okay with Rashad Jennings. They said he was going to be the workhorse a few weeks ago. I know we had mentioned that. But now with Wilson definitely cleared, and I don't think he's going to necessarily split carries with Jennings. I think Jennings still gets the bulk of the work. But I'm inclined to stay away from the whole Giants running back situation now.
I would 100% agree with that. As far as that goes, I'm reading this quick blurb that was the where we got this news from the Giants.com. I guess it's their official site. But just reading the blurb, it looks like that he's the second coming of Walter Payton here. He was cleared for full participation. He looked dynamic as ever and making cuts like his old self, and still looks like one of the most athletic players on the field. I don't know how much of a better review you can give him than that. So he's definitely going to be in the running for the starting spot, I would think.
Yeah, I think this is his third year, right?
Yeah. Close to something like that.
Second or third, I forget. Yeah, that they just drafted him in the first round a couple years ago, so I don't think they're going to give up on him completely. But I mean,
no, not at all.
With guys like Jennings and Peyton Hillis, which I don't think Peyton Hillis will take away too many carries, but now they drafted another guy, Andre Williams. So I mean, it's kind of a mess there. I'd kind of just avoid it and wait till things shake out and just maybe put it on hold until next year.
Yeah, or I mean, I don't know where they're getting drafted and things like that, but I guess if he's available really late, you want to take a shot, or you can even see how it goes, and they might even be available on the waiver wire.
Yeah, I think Jennings is going to go.
Somebody emerges.
Yeah, I think Jennings is probably going too early for me to want to take him. I can check real quick. Yeah, he's going in the 7th round right now.
Yeah, he's definitely being drafted. I know that. I didn't know what the updates were. I have Wilson is going undrafted right now, but people might just be avoiding him because they didn't know what his injury situation was like. So
yeah, he'll start getting
his ADP will probably go up.
Yeah, he'll start getting drafted now. But all right, well, let's move on to our NFC West spotlight, or NFC West focus, I guess, and then we'll start off with the sleeper spotlight.
Primetime fantasy football's sleeper spotlight.
All right, Steve, you want to start us off with the sleeper spotlight? I guess we'll kick it off with quarterbacks as usual.
Sure, absolutely. Let me just get my my list up here. Oh, I have the Russell Wilson as on my sleeper spotlight list, who you might not think as a Super Bowl winning quarterback would be a sleeper. A lot of people know who he is at this point, but fantasy-wise, he's the 12th quarterback being taken right now, and his average round position where he's being drafted is the 10th round. So I would just consider Russell Wilson better than the 12th quarterback taken, because in a 12-team league, he's just barely scratching the surface as a quarterback number 1, or if you're in a 10-team league, is being drafted as a quarterback number 2.
Right.
So in these sleepers, I don't just look at the late rounds. I also look at who's being picked in front of him, and I just think that Russell Wilson is better than the 12th best fantasy quarterback when you look at his running abilities combined with his passing abilities and things like that.
Yeah, he was he was a guy going much earlier than that last year, and I know he lost some weapons, so that's going to hurt him. But he still has legs. I mean, he's not going to put up big numbers every week, maybe you want to have an okay backup you can slide in there. But I mean, even if you just play him on the home games, you're going to get some production because his home versus away statistics. I don't have them in front of me, but it's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that should go for all of the Seattle Seahawks. They're essentially unbeatable at Quest Field.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of intrigued to see their offense this year. With losing a couple guys, but with Percy Harvin hopefully 100% healthy, and I could see Russell Wilson getting a lot of extra points just from dump-offs to Percy Harvin.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. He can go ahead and take it and run with it. Those swing passes could be useful.
Yeah, and by the way, he was the 8th highest scoring fantasy quarterback last year, according to this list of fantasy quarterbacks in standard leagues. Next, right, we'll go with Kaepernick being the 13th quarterback taken, also being drafted in the 10th round. A guy that a couple years ago everybody was really high on, it again, just had an off season last year as far as fantasy production. I know you're not a huge fan of him still, but any quarterback who has the threat to run I like because they're going to rack up those yards, and rushing touchdowns are worth 6 points, as you know.
I do know that, yeah. I played fantasy football, yeah. Rushing touchdowns worth 6.
Oh, you've played before. Okay.
Yeah, I played once or twice. Like you said, I'm not as high on Kaepernick. But like you also said, you make a good point about the running quarterbacks, and I don't know, I try to separate the personal and what I think of a guy before drafting. I've gotten better about it, especially with baseball. I started drafting Yankees for the first time.
Wow.
A couple years ago, so that was a big step for me. But
hats off to you.
I just can't seem to get past the fact that I don't really like Kaepernick that much as a person. So I just don't like him that much as a football player. But he's a good player, so
not on board with kissing the bicep.
Nah, kissing the bicep. He looks a little bit like Squidward from SpongeBob. That kind of weirds me out.
Yes,
so
he does.
I kind of try to avoid him, but he's a good player, and he could certainly. Like you said, he's being taken essentially right when Russell Wilson is, so it's essentially take your pick there, but we could see both of those guys being sleepers out of this division.
Yeah, here's my thing with these guys, with both Russell Wilson and Kaepernick. It's kind of like pick your poison here. I mean, I think either one can produce as much as the other. With respect, or with regards to when you're drafting a quarterback, I think quarterbacks are going way later this year. I think Tom Brady is going ridiculously late. Cam Newton, people are scared of his ankle injury. He's going ridiculously late. There are so many quarterbacks you can get later on. I honestly, if I'm, sitting there, with the 6th or 7th pick, it kind of all depends who's there in front of me. But, I'm not taking, even though some of these guys like, Rodgers and Manning and stuff like that, I'm waiting on a quarterback. I mean, when you can get Russell Wilson in the 10th round as even your starter, he's a perfectly serviceable fantasy football quarterback starter. You just load, especially with how thin running backs are this year. What you want to do, you want to load up on running backs. Get a couple early if you can. And then what you want to do is just load up on some of these guys that are question marks. You're bound to hit on one or two of them. In the meantime, you can also get some really good wide receivers early on, and then take a quarterback in the 10th round, and take another one in the 12th or 13th round, and have two. I mean, honestly, if you wait until the 10th and 12th round, you can still get two perfectly fine quarterbacks. You can probably get Russell Wilson and Jay Cutler, if I had to guess. And that's the two I had last year.
Exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah, those are the two I had last year, and guess what? Quarterback was not my weakest position by any means.
Yeah, we're just looking at these average rounds, and seeing there's a lot of 6s and 7s, and then, like you said, Russell Wilson at 10 and Cutler at 12. So, like you said, it's really deep, and running back isn't deep. So, or if you're in a 3 wide receiver league, which is pretty standard, you could, like you said, load up on other talent from other skill positions like wide receiver, or with the shallower running back class than running backs. But I would definitely. You and I have the same strategy, it seems, going into the draft, which will be fun because we're in a league together.
Yeah.
So we're both going to go late on quarterbacks and see how it turns out, I think.
Yeah, I agree. All right, well, let's move on to receivers. You got Stevie Johnson on here with the ADP of 127 round, depending on where you're at, probably about 13th or 14th. I'm actually a little opposite ends of the spectrum, I think, with you on this one. I don't know if I see a place for Stevie Johnson in that offense, but with Anquan Boldin being another year older, and I know people probably think this every year, there is a chance for Stevie Johnson to get some production, and getting him in the 14th round is probably about where I'd want him. I don't think I'd take him any higher than that.
Okay. I mean, I see that as fair. I just think that's late for a guy who came in from Buffalo. I'm kind of thinking sleeper-wise that he could be energized going from a place like Buffalo to a place like San Francisco where he has a chance to win a Super Bowl.
Well, the weather's nicer.
So I'm looking at him, and the weather's nicer. So I'm thinking that he could come in motivated and find some old legs, some young legs maybe, and he's always got speed. This is always his asset. So
right.
If he can become a deep threat, because Kaepernick can certainly throw it, if he can become a deep threat, then I can see him as a sleeper. That's just where I'm coming from, hopefully with some new motivation.
I mean, squids have many arms to use to throw a football, so of course Kaepernick.
That's true. That's a good point you made.
Next up, and this one I do agree with, Tavon Austin, ADP of 130, round about 14 or 15. I'm 100% on board with that, because going that late, I would actually even take him a little earlier than that, because like you said, I don't know how true that story was about him not knowing the playbook and now knowing it, but there aren't many other options on St. Louis, and the guy has talent. So, I mean, that late, you're not relying on him to start. So, I would even go a couple rounds earlier than that to make sure I get him in case he does have a breakout season. Because if he does, you don't want to miss that boat.
I would agree with that. I think we kind of went over our Tavon Austin points when we were in the doing our news segment. But yeah, he's a breakout potential, and he's a game breaker potential, and they're essentially looking for options. Just looking over the names like Chris Givens and Austin Pettis is okay, and you got Kenny Britt, but I mean Tavon Austin is the name that people are going to recognize, and he should certainly get plenty of chance to prove himself this year, I would think, especially knowing the playbook in a year more experienced.
What do you have? Is Thor outside your window there? Sounds like it.
I believe he is. I'm not sure if it's the male or female. Really,
yeah, that's true.
Some type of Thor.
Sounds like a female.
Is outside.
And then last, like you said, Kenny Britt going undrafted right now. I'll let you talk about him first, because I probably am going to disagree.
Yeah, and essentially the reason that I put Kenny Britt on here is because I like him the most of the other receivers to emerge. I see Tavon Austin as a slot guy, who obviously we both like as a slot guy, but they still need somebody on the outside because Sam Bradford has a really good arm, so he needs somebody to throw it to outside the numbers, and I just like Kenny Britt better than Chris Givens or Austin Pettis, and I think he has something to prove coming from Tennessee. So especially coming undrafted, you might even be able to pick him up on the wire afterward, and not even have to waste a draft pick on him. But he's just the one that I chose out of necessity because they don't really have many other options, which is over in St. Louis.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy who's never quite panned out, and maybe he does go to St. Louis and pan out a little more, but I mean, he's just a guy that's consistently underwhelmed for me. I mean, I've had him on a team a couple years ago, and he just, he's a guy that's, he's going to have a good week, and then you're like, oh, maybe I can play him, and then the next week he's not going to do anything. I personally won't be drafting him just for that fact that I don't want to see him have a good week, think about playing him, and then get bit in the ass by him, thrown in a bone.
I hear you. But I do have John on my side. He said that Kenny Britt's big enough to be the guy inside the 10, so yeah, I'm sticking with John, and I'm sticking with my guns. So
he does have the size. He tore his ACL a couple years ago, didn't he? So that's I'm sure that's better by now. We'll move on to running backs, and I have a note here that I kind of realized going into this. The NFC West has become the division of second string running backs that are threatening to be the number one guy. You got Carlos Hyde in San Francisco, Trey Mason in St. Louis, Christine Michael in Seattle, and even I don't even know if Andre Ellington's definitely going to be. I mean, there's Stephon Taylor and I know they just drafted another guy. I thought. No, they got John Dwyer. That's right. So anyway, let's start off with Carlos Hyde, a guy that, there's already been stories coming out that Frank Gore is going to get less carries this year, so they're going to go to Carlos Hyde more than likely. He's a guy who I have seen that can, people saying all over the place that he could make a fantasy impact in the first few weeks. I mean, he's going to get some carries. Right now going right around the 13th or 14th round, ADP at 123.7, and I think you're going to see that creep up. So just keep an eye on that. But he's a guy that, especially if you're in a keeper league, and I know I say that a lot, but if you're in a keeper league, definitely got to keep an eye on, because Frank Gore is not going to be there forever.
Yeah, Frank Gore is 31, which is over the hill.
Over the hill,
talking running back. So. And he's already had 10 years, and he's up over 2,000 rushing attempts for his career at this point. So, like you said, he's kind of he's been durable for the most part, but he's older. He's a little bit slower, but it's definitely, I could see that becoming a running back by committee thing. And like you said, Carlos Hyde, it's always good to go with the guy who goes later, because that's you can get a flyer on that if he's the guy that emerges. So I would agree with that.
Yeah, and then same thing, you got Trey Mason in St. Louis. Now, I've seen people try and say that Trey Mason's going to take over for Zach Stacy halfway through the season. I don't know if I buy that, but it would be a good idea if you draft Zach Stacy to draft Trey Mason as a handcuff. I don't necessarily think he's going to take over the starting role, but it's always better to be safe than sorry.
Yeah, for me it's a handcuff, like you said, a handcuff thing. So over at 123, it looks like 124 is where his average draft position is. So as far as a handcuff goes, I think that's a pretty good spot to get one. And as far as handcuffs go, he's one with some good upside, because they said that they want to give him like 10 carries a game. So he could be a good handcuff to have, and you might, even if you don't have Zach Stacy, you might have some good trade bait for the guy who does have Zach Stacy. So
yeah, this is true. And we'll get into Zach Stacy a little bit later when we talk over-under. So we'll move on to tight ends real quick. John Carlson, undrafted right now.
Yeah, I think that he's a big body in Arizona, and he's somebody who, they have big red zone targets at wide receiver, but Bruce Arians has been searching and searching for a tight end that he likes enough to be able to use, and he said that he's finally got one in John Carlson. And I saw a report on ESPN that said that John Carlson has impressed in the OTAs and the preseason stuff. So he's somebody to keep an eye out for, and one of those tight ends that we were talking about that you might be able to pick up and get lucky with if you pick Gronkowski and you're looking for a tight end as a backup. I think John Carlson is definitely somebody who could emerge as that type of option for you. Yeah,
and another guy, a guy who had shown a couple flashes last year, Jared Cook on the Rams, going in the 14th, probably even 15th round some places, probably going undrafted in some drafts. A guy that people were all over after the first couple weeks of last season, and he kind of just fell off a little bit, but a guy that obviously can give you fantasy production. So it's not a question of, if he's got it, it's just a question of does he pull it through.
Yeah, exactly. And we've been talking, the common theme throughout this entire podcast episode so far is that St. Louis is short on options. So if he can be one of the guys that comes through on an option as one of the options, he could be a guy that can come through for you. And like you said, the talent's there. It's just a matter of if he uses his talents to the best of his ability. That's all. Yeah,
looking at his fantasy points last year, obviously that huge week one, 141 yards and 2 touchdowns, so he had 33 points. He only scored over 10 points 3 times the rest of the year, with one of them being in the final week against Seattle. So, that's a good way to go out at the end of the season. But he did have a couple, one-catch games here and there. But, again, it's a possibility that he's going to get better. I think he's definitely got the skills. So,
yeah, agree.
And like we said, if you're just drafting a guy to back up Gronkowski, he might not be a bad option, and you're not going to have to start him every week anyway. So,
sure.
Let's take a real quick break, and then we'll come back and we'll do over under, and then we'll do our mock draft breakdown. So we'll be back in just a couple minutes. Stick around, much more to come.
The Showcast.
Next on the list is The Nut Job. Voices are Will Arnett and Liam Neeson. Liam Neeson is enough just to get me to rent it.
Squirrels, right?
Yeah, this is the squirrel. I would hope so with a movie called The Nut Job. Otherwise, it's a complete porn title that I'm just reviewing completely wrong.
Liam Neeson in it?
Well, you never know.
Sundays on Next Level Radio.
Hi, this is Pete Mitchell from No More Kings, and when I'm not running from zombies, I'm listening to Next Level Radio.
This is Robot Bill, producer for Primetime Fantasy Football. Make sure you go to nextlevelradioonline.com for other shows and celebrity interviews, and subscribe to both Next Level Radio and Primetime Fantasy Football on iTunes. Now, back to this week's Primetime Fantasy Football.
Welcome back from that quick break. Like I said, that was an extra quick break, only like 16 seconds because everything was out of order. But that's okay because it doesn't really matter. Anyway, so I forgot to mention, actually, it's National Hot Dog Day, so happy National Hot Dog Day. I don't know if you got a hot dog or what, but
it's Batman Day, too.
It is Batman Day. So go dress in your Batman gear and eat a hot dog.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so let's get right back into the thick of it. By the way, if you want to join our fantasy football league, it's email your name to primetime@nextlevelradioonline.com, and we'll send you the invite. I think we have about 6 or 7 people in right now, so I mean we're almost at the minimum with plenty of time left. We're only going to take a maximum of 16, so there's only about 9 or 10 spots left, so make sure you get that in now. And also you can tweet your questions at NXT Level Radio with the hashtag PTFF, or also email them to primetime@nextlevelradioonline.com, and I'm pretty sure we'll get to answer them. We usually do. So let's move on, like I said, to over-under.
It's time for Over-Under.
First up, we'll talk Russell Wilson, a guy we said could be a sleeper. 282 points last year with 17.6 per game, a really good average. Over 3,300 passing yards, 26 touchdowns, just 9 interceptions, 539 rushing yards, a rushing touchdown, but 5 lost fumbles. That's kind of a lot for a quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, this just proves that this just proves my sleeper spotlight. And both of our sleeper spotlights, that Russell Wilson is better than the 12th quarterback. But as far as over-under is concerned, this is a pretty good year from Russell Wilson. I still think that he has the capability to go over, and it's on, I think he can get into the end zone rushing more than once. Mm-hmm. So this is a really close one. This is close to a push, but I'm going to go just a bit over. I think he can possibly be a 300-point player in fantasy moving forward.
Yeah, and I know I kind of built him up in the sleeper spotlight. I am going to go a little bit under, though, just because of the loss of weapons. I do think Percy Harvin kind of makes up for it a little bit. But like I said, I do think he can still put up 16, 17 points a game, and I think that average is only because of having a couple low games when he's on the road. So like I said, if you're starting him at home, I think you're starting him at home, you're getting that 17 or 18 a game. On the road, maybe I'd find like a Jay Cutler or something. But I'm going to go just a little bit under. But like we said, for a guy going in the 10th or 11th round, I mean, production there is great. I mean, you're only a couple points behind other, guys going in the first few rounds. So
exactly.
Colin Kaepernick, kind of the same story. 277 last year, just 17.3 per game. Over almost 3,200 passing yards, 21 touchdowns, just 8 interceptions, also 524 rushing yards, 4 rushing touchdowns, and 4 lost fumbles. Their stats are very similar, these two. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, absolutely. They pretty much mirrored each other. Obviously, only a difference of 5 fantasy points. And I'm going to go under on Kaepernick. We went over my trials and tribulations with Colin Kaepernick, so I'm just going to leave it at that and go under on Colin Kaepernick because I just don't think he'll have as good a year.
Yeah, I'm going to go Oppo Boppo on you. I'm going over for the Kaepernick. I'm a little bit higher on him than Wilson. I think with him, at least, they added some weapons. They didn't really add as many weapons in Actually, I don't think they really added any weapons in Seattle. They actually at least got him an extra receiver in Stevie Johnson, drafted another talented running back in Carlos Hyde. So I'm going to go over. I think his passing yards go up. His rushing numbers probably go down a little bit, but I think his passing numbers go up and make up for it. So last quarterback we're going to do, because Sam Bradford only played 7 games last year. Carson Palmer in Arizona, his second year, I believe, in Arizona. 250 points last year, which is 15.6 per game. Not bad for a guy who probably was a backup maybe on a few teams. 4,274 yards, 24 touchdowns, 22 interceptions. Not a great ratio. A whopping 3 rushing yards and 3 lost fumbles to go with it. So probably each rush he got a yard and lost the football, probably, if I had to guess.
Yeah. My advice would be stay in the pocket.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go over on that. I think he can put up the passing numbers again, maybe get those interceptions down a little bit. I like having Larry Fitzgerald and Michael Floyd still there, and having a couple young, talented running backs won't hurt either.
Yeah, you sounded surprised when you said over, but I'm going to go over as well. And I think that, like you said, I think he's better than 24 to 22 as far as touchdown interception ratio goes, and I like his weapons on the outside with Fitzgerald and Michael Floyd. So essentially, I'm just saying the same thing you're saying. So we might as well move on, and I like the over.
Yeah, the only thing going against Carson Palmer is a USC quarterback. That doesn't usually help you. Wide receiver wise, Larry Fitzgerald, one of his wide receivers, 156.2 points per game, or points per game. That would be nice. Points, 9.8 per game. PPR added another 82 to bring him to 238, 14.9 per game. So 82 catches, 954 yards, 10 touchdowns, 8 rushing yards, and a fumble lost.
I'm going to go over. I think Larry Fitzgerald is one of the best wide receivers in the game, and as a result, as one of the best wide receivers in the game, I think those are good for at least 10 points per game. So 9.8 to 10 isn't too much of a jump, but I think he can even exceed 10 points per game, and I think Larry Fitzgerald has a little bit better of a year this year, another year with Carson Palmer, and he can pick up his stats. I'm going to go over.
Yeah, I'm going over too. I mean, I can't go against a guy with hands like Larry Fitzgerald. I mean, that guy catches everything thrown his way. The other receiver in Arizona, Michael Floyd, 136 points last year, 8.5 per game. PPR, he had another 65, so bringing him to 201, 12.6 per game. 65 catches, 1,041 yards, and 5 touchdowns.
I'm going to go over again, and I guess I'm going to say that the Cardinals are going to have a good year this year, because I'm going over on everybody, but I think Michael Floyd is a solid wide receiver. He's a big guy. He's a good red zone target, so if Larry Fitzgerald decides to be double covered on his fade route, you might be able to go to Michael Floyd on the other side and have another just as good weapon on the other side. So I'm going to go over, and again, another year with Carson Palmer, another year of learning the system. I think his stats go up.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with that. I'm taking the over. I'm actually thinking he's going to put up close to the numbers that Fitzgerald put up last year. I think he's going to get another 10 to 20 receptions. Yardage looks good, and I think he's going to add a couple more touchdowns in there. I think he's in for actually a pretty breakout year.
Yeah, by the way you're describing it, he should have a huge year. So
yeah, I really like him.
To see,
I really like him this year. I'm not sure. Well, let me check his ADP real quick. If you wanna start going on to Anquan, I'll check Floyd's ADP.
Yeah, the ambassador of Quan ended up with 166 points last year, which is good for 10.4 per game. The PPR added 85 points. He had up 251, good for 15, almost 16 points a game. 85 catches, like I said, with 1,200 yards, 7 touchdowns. He had 11 rushing yards and no fumbles lost because he has the strongest hands in NFL history.
And the strongest jaw.
And the strongest jaw, yeah. The old Cardinal wide receiver here. I'm gonna go. Oh, I'm realizing this is a tough one for me because I really like Anquan Bolden.
Well, while you're thinking about it, Floyd is going in about the 7th round right now. He's at ADP's at like 60, and I like him much better than that. I actually like him to go maybe in the 5th or 6th round. I think he's going to be a top 20 wide receiver easily, probably actually top 15 maybe. I gotta look at the list. We're gonna do our rankings in a couple weeks, so I'll let you know for sure then. But I really like Floyd this year. But anyway, Bolden, I'm gonna go under on Bolden. I think he takes a little bit of a dip with Stevie Johnson there. I think I don't think either of them are really gonna have a great season because they're both there. I think Crabtree being back is also gonna hurt his value, so I'm gonna go under.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at the stats, he had a better year than Larry Fitzgerald last year. So, I mean, it's tough to go over when the guy has a better year than Larry Fitzgerald. So I'm going to go under as well, but only because his last year was really good.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
I think I mean, obviously, I like Anquan Bolden a lot, but it'll be tough to duplicate that year. Like you said, another year older for him with Stevie Johnson added and Carlos Hyde added. They got some more weapons, so it'll be tough for him to duplicate that year.
Okay, yeah, I agree. Doug Baldwin, 108, 6.8 per game with 158. He had exactly 50 receptions last year, 778 yards, 5 touchdowns, and 6 rushing yards. By the way, we are skipping Kenny Britt, Stevie Johnson, Tavon Austin, Michael Crabtree, and Percy Harvin because they all played less than 14 games last year. And we just don't have the time. And we talked about half of them already anyway, so.
Yeah, we really did.
Percy Harvin and Michael Crabtree over. Tavon Austin, Stevie Johnson, and Kenny Britt. You can rewind the tapes and go back to the beginning of the podcast because that's when we talked about that. So Doug Baldwin, I'm going to go over, especially now that Sidney Rice retired today. That forces, I mean, as if he wasn't already going to be the number 2 guy, but that definitely makes him the number 2 guy. And with Percy Harvin maybe taking up a little extra coverage, hopefully that he's healthy now, I got to see him getting more than 50 catches and 700 yards. So, I mean, I got to go over by at least, I think he can creep up to that 8 or 9 per game. Right now he's only at 6.8. I think he can get up to that, like 9 per game roughly.
Yeah, I'm going over as well. You said it with the retirement of Sidney Rice. If we can talk real football real quick right here. They're begging for a receiver.
Yeah.
Like, I don't see anybody. And Doug Baldwin is it by default. So if their second wide receiver is only putting up 7 fantasy points a game, they're in trouble as a football team, and more than your team is in trouble as a fantasy team. So, yeah. Doug Baldwin better score more points, or the defending Super Bowl champions are in trouble. So, I'm going to go over for sure on Doug Baldwin just by opportunities, and he'll get more targets, which means more catches and more points.
Yeah, and running backs, these are interesting ones to me. The running backs. We'll start off with Marshawn Lynch, 233 points last year, 14.58 per game. PPR 269 with 16.83 per game, 1,257 rushing yards, 12 rushing touchdowns, added 36 catches for 316 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a lost fumble. I know you had Lynch on your team last year and the year before, and I think again probably this year. Yeah,
absolutely. I ride with Marshawn Lynch as much as the Seahawks ride with Marshawn Lynch. He's about that action, and there's nothing that tells me Marshawn Lynch isn't one of the best running backs in the game. And again, as biased as I am against Kaepernick, as biased as I am for Marshawn Lynch, and so I'm going over. And I do think he's better than 14.5 per game, as he's the number 1 running back, and those guys should approach between 15 and 20. So I'm all about Marshawn Lynch, and I'm excited to see what he does again this year.
Yeah, he definitely is all about that action, and because of that, I'll take the slightly over as well. Not by much, but I think he can get over that 15 point per game hump that he didn't get over last year. So I'm on board with that. Next up, Frank Gore, 174.9 points last year, 10.9 per game. Kind of a low season for him. 190 points PPR-wise, 11.9 per game. 1,128 rushing yards, 9 rushing touchdowns, 16 catches, 141 reception yards, and 3 lost fumbles.
Yeah, we've kind of been alluding to it a little bit with Carlos Hyde. 10.9 isn't a lot for Frank Gore, but I guess you can count me as saying he's going to have a poor season, because I'm going to go under even on that number. I see a little bit of a split backfield here, and Harbaugh has proven that if a guy gets hot, you prove that with Kaepernick, taking him over Alex Smith halfway through a year when Alex Smith was having a good year. So he doesn't have too much loyalty to guys from the past. So if Carlos Hyde proves that he can do something, then that could hurt Frank Gore.
Yeah, I'm taking under on Franklin. I'm going to say, I'm going to agree with you and say Carlos Hyde's going to dig into those carries. They're already saying that he's going to lose some carries this year, just in general. And I think they're actually going to, I think they're going to sling it a little more this year, for some reason.
Okay.
Maybe because of that. Maybe because of that, the added weapons and maybe have a couple more receptions for their running backs, but I think Carlos Hyde's going to get a lot of those with the speed and the youngness. Frank Gore is 31 years old, so you don't see a lot of I'll just say this, you don't see a lot of 30-year-old running backs increasing their fantasy points year to year, unless you're Fred Jackson.
Yeah.
And then we'll move on to Zach Stacy. He played 14 games last year. He had 157 points, 11.2 per game, kind of quietly. I mean, I know he had a kind of a breakout year for a lot of people, but 11.24 is pretty good for a guy that, I honestly didn't realize how early they had him start there. For some reason, I thought it was later in the year, but he had 183 points PPR-wise for 13 a game. Just under 1,000 rushing yards, 973, 7 touchdowns, 26 catches, 141 yards, a touchdown, and a lost fumble.
I could see Zach Stacy as a 1,000-yard back, and for that reason, well, he only played 14 games, so he probably would have been a 1,000-yard back if he played full year. But with a full year, I think he goes over, not just in total, but he's better than 11 per game. He's a pretty good running back and productive. So as long as Trey Mason doesn't take too many carries, then I'll go over and say that he can eclipse 12 to 15 points a week.
Yeah, I'm going to go over. I'm not buying too much of the Trey Mason hype. I do think, like I said, he would be a good handcuff just in case. But when Zach Stacy came in, it was week 5 where he began as the starter. He only scored under 10 points 3 times from week 5 to 17. So that's pretty good.
Production. Yeah.
He didn't play in weeks 2, 3, 4, and 11, it looks like. Every other week he did play. He had and when he did score under 10, it was just by a couple points, 7.8, 8.1, and 7.8. So, I mean, he didn't throw up a lot of goose eggs. So I'm going to take the over. I actually like Zach Stacy this year. A guy who I'm not sure if I like, Andre Ellington. Played 15 games, 126 points, so in one extra game he had less points. I don't think he was the exclusive guy, though, with Mendenhall there. But anyway, 8.4 per game, 165 PPR, 11 per game. 652 rushing yards, just 3 rushing touchdowns, 39 catches, though, with 371 yards and a touchdown.
We discussed it before we hopped on the podcast here. This is an interesting one because everybody's just so high on Andre Ellington, and I didn't realize it until I started looking at the national pundits rankings, where he's ranked in the top 40 to 50 in both Yahoo, ESPN, and pretty much all around. So
right.
I'm going to go over because of the 8.4 per game. I think he's better than that, but I'm not sure that, like you said, I'm buying into the amount of hype that everybody else is saying he's going to have. So it's interesting to watch his season.
Yeah, I guess I'll take the over as well because 8.4 per game is really low. For a guy that should be
a running back.
Yeah, for a guy that's starting for the most part. But I do think they like to sling it in Arizona. I mean, last year the most carries he had in the game was 15, and I know they're worried about him with the short yardage situations too, so that could take away a lot of carries for him. So I'm actually not sure why any of the national guys have him ranked that high. I'm much lower on him. Like between him and Stacy, I would take Stacy.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. Yeah, I mean, Stacy seems more proven just because he was the kind of the featured back exclusively last year when Andre Ellington wasn't. Maybe we talked about a little bit about the shallow running back class. Maybe it's that. Maybe his draft position is just so high because the running back position is so shallow. So they want you to get guys like this earlier this year than
I
usual.
guess.
I'm not sure.
I guess let's move on to tight ends real quick, and then we'll quick go through our mock draft breakdowns. Vernon Davis, 15 games last year, 155 points for 10.3 per game. PPR league amassed 207 points for 13.8 per game, 52 catches, 815 yards, 13 touchdowns, which I think was second or third amongst tight ends in the league, and 1 fumble lost.
Yeah, he's definitely a guy. If you're in a PPR league, he's one of the better tight ends that you could have. If you're in a regular league, he's one of the better tight ends you could have. But especially, he's a high volume catch guy for a PPR league. So I would definitely take him higher in a PPR league than I would in a standard league. I'm going to go under because 10.3 per game as a tight end is a monster season for a tight end. And 13 touchdowns for a tight end or wide receiver is a monster season.
Yeah, 13's a lot of touchdowns. That was
a little
second.
bit along this. Yeah, and Jimmy Graham obviously.
Yeah, and then Julius Thomas had 12.
Yeah, so yeah, outperforming Julius Thomas, that's impressive. And so I'm kind of along the same lines as Anquan Bolden. He's a really good player, and I wouldn't have any problem having him on my team at all. But to me, it's going to be tough to duplicate that year. So I'm going to go under just because of the high number that he put up last year.
Yeah, I'm going to go under as well. I could see him doing similar numbers with reception and yards, but I think the touchdowns drop by a few. He might not even get to double digits again with, like we said before, with all the added people, there's more room to spread it around. So,
sure.
Last up, we got Jared Cook, 89 points. Like we said, he had a really good first week, and after that, not so much. 5.57 per game PPR. 140 with 8.7 per game. 51 catches, 671 yards, 5 touchdowns, and a lost fumble.
Yep, I'm gonna go over. We talked about the one of the themes of this show has been that there's a couple teams that are really lacking in receiving options. Seattle being one, and certainly St. Louis, where Jared Cook is, being another. So I'm gonna go over because I think Jared Cook has certainly has the ability to be one of those emerging targets, just because of the lack of options otherwise.
Yeah, I'm going to go over as well. And remember, he only had Sam Bradford for 7 games last year. So anytime you get your starting quarterback back, that definitely helps.
Yeah, it's a great point. Certainly get more opportunity there.
All right, so let's move on to our mock drafts. Unfortunately, Robot Bill did not prepare a introduction for mock drafts yet. So, yeah, he's already been doing some side work we saw. He's in an Old Spice commercial, clearly. That's his voice.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys have seen the Old Spice commercial with the robotic thing, but that's definitely Robot Bill's voice. So, he's getting around. But anyway, well, Steve, you started out with yours last week, so I guess we'll do mine first this week. We both did 12-team. I did the PPR. Steve did the standard. We both did the 4th overall pick. So like I said earlier, first round, 4th overall pick. This was earlier today when people thought Jamaal Charles was holding out. And a couple hours later, he signed the contract. So I got Jamaal Charles in the 4th spot with McCoy, Forte, and Peterson going before him. Now, honestly, I was hoping Forte would drop to me because I think Forte in a PPR league can be the highest scoring running back this year. But I am okay with having the highest scoring PPR running back last year in Jamaal Charles, so I'm not against that.
Yeah.
And then second round, I got Randall Cobb.
Definitely a high one.
What's that?
Forte is definitely a high guy for as far as a PPR goes. He's one of the guys that's going to go way higher than in the non-PPR.
Yeah, definitely. And with all the throwing that Chicago did last year, you can see why. I got Randall Cobb in the second round. I took him before Jordy Nelson and before Alshon Jeffrey, mainly because he's going to have Rodgers back, and he's going to be back. People forget that how good of a season he had a couple years ago. So if Randall Cobb and Jordy Nelson were there, because Jordy Nelson went the pick after, who would you take between those two?
I'm a Jordy Nelson guy. The Packers don't have a number one, but I would consider Jordy Nelson the number one. But like you said, it's kind of interchangeable. Like you said, they went right after each other. And Rodgers always loved to spread the ball around. But I would go Jordy Nelson, but I'm sure you're happy with Randall Cobb, and I would have been happy if I was in the same slot and took Jordy Nelson and Randall Cobb went right after me. So
yeah, they're kind of interchangeable. And then in the third round, I got Julius Thomas because Gronkowski went the pick before, and I kind of wanted to get Gronk, and I thought he was going to fall to me. And Thomas ended up being there, which I'm not upset with at all, because I consider him probably the 3rd best tight end in the league when everybody's healthy. 4th round, I got said Zach Stacy that we talked about a little bit earlier. 5th round, I went a little early on quarterback in this one. I'm not sure why. I could have waited, but I think it was mainly because I didn't really like anybody else that was there. So I went with Andrew Luck over Matthew Stafford, by the way, which could be a dumb choice as much as they throw it. But I think Andrew Luck is in for a very good year this year. And I think he, if I remember correctly, he had a very good year last year. I think he was the 4th highest scoring. Or no, sorry, I'm a little bit off here. He was the 7th highest. Stafford scoring just above him. Now this is actually, I think I'm looking in a non-standard scoring league, so the numbers might be a little bit skewed. But anyway, took him in the 5th. I took Golden Tate in the 6th to start opposite Randall Cobb. And like I said to you last week, and if it's a PPR league, I feel like you can get away with a guy like that as a starter because you're getting points just for him getting a catch. I mean, I think in PPR it's much easier or much better strategy, I guess, to make sure you solidify your running back spot, and you can kind of pick and choose a bunch of wide receivers that you can insert here and there throughout the season. I don't know how what your strategy usually is for a PPR.
Yeah, I like the Golden Tate pick for sure, and I like who you got in the 8th as well. A little bit of foreshadowing. I'll let you say who you got because it's your draft, but I can see the whole list. So I like that. The combination of Golden Tate and your guy that you got in the 8th round, like you said, they're kind of interchangeable people that are solid PPR guys that'll put up better numbers because they're volume catch guys and catch and run, so you can get some yards after catch as well.
Right, and by the way, in the standard scoring that I'm looking at, Andrew Luck was the 4th highest behind Manning, Breeze, and Newton. Stafford was the 6th, so he actually scored more points than Stafford in this league, at least, only by a couple, but whatever counts.
Yeah. I like Andrew Luck.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of his. In the 6th round, I already said I got Golden Tate. 7th round, I got Lamar Miller. Him sliding to the 7th round, a guy that's probably going to start. Could be a very good, could be a very good flex option. I feel like people still forget about him being there, and I know he didn't have a great year last year, but I think he can have a bounce back season this year.
Mm-hmm.
And 7th round, I mean that's Ben Tate. Got picked before him.
Well, yeah, that proves to be a terrible pick at this point.
And then, like you said, in the 8th round, I got Cecil Shorts, which I also was a big fan of that pick. Getting him,
good value.
Yeah, I mean, Eric Decker went before him, Sammy Watkins went before him, Amendola and Bo went right after him. I mean, out of those 5, I think Cecil Shorts has the best chance to put up bigger numbers. I mean, he is the number 1 guy. He's got a rookie opposite him, so, I mean, he's, Marquise Lee I like, but I think Cecil Shorts gets the brunt of the catches over there.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that you'd rather have Cecil Shorts than Sammy Watkins. I'd like to put out a public service announcement to have everybody hold their horses on Sammy Watkins for a bit. He's on fire in training camp right now, but guy's a rookie and he hasn't played a game in the NFL yet. If he's good, then that'll be exciting because I like to watch fast guys run fast and catch the ball. But hold your horses just for a second on Sammy Watkins before he's the next coming of Jerry Rice. Yeah,
not often do those smaller, quicker guys excel right away in the NFL. Usually it takes them a couple years. Bigger guys like Calvin Johnson who can just reach out there, get it, and score touchdowns is a little bit different. Julio Jones the same way as a bigger guy. A guy like Sammy Watkins, though, he's probably going to... I would compare him more... I would like to think he does better than Tavon Austin did last year, but, I mean, maybe like a Cordero Patterson type of deal. It's kind of hard to say. But, I wouldn't be... I wouldn't be all over him like some people are as well. Kyrie Robinson in the 9th, just kind of taking a stab at a guy who could end up being the guy in New Orleans to get a lot of carries. I know a lot of people are high on him this year. So DeAndre Hopkins in the... What's that?
That's a PPR pick, too. That's a good pick for a PPR.
Yeah,
he's
sure.
He's a running back that catches the ball.
Yeah, that is correct. You are right. See, there's a reason you're on the show. DeAndre Hopkins in the 10th. I think I took him last week, too, if you can't tell. I like DeAndre Hopkins. Carlos Hyde in the 11th, a guy that we talked about a little earlier. Took him before Trey Mason because I think he's going to get more production than Trey Mason this year. I drafted my backup quarterback in the 12th. There was only... I thought about taking McCown. I decided not to. I took Tannehill instead because Tannehill's a guy he could be a sneaky, like top 15 quarterback. And like I said, he's my backup, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, right.
Marcus Wheaton, another guy in the 13th that I'm just kind of taking a stab on that could end up having good production this year. And then I took Kansas City defense in the 14th, which was, I think, the highest scoring defense last year, if I remember right.
I don't know if that's. I mean, I don't have it in front of me, but I mean, Seattle scored a ton, but it could have been Kansas City for sure. I'm just not.
Yeah,
sure.
let me check real quick. But yeah, so yeah, they were highest scoring by like 15 points.
Nice. No,
So,
that's a good pick then.
Yeah, to get them in the 14th, where looking, Houston went before them, Cleveland, Arizona, Cincinnati, Denver, New England, San Francisco, St. Louis, Carolina, and Seattle all went before Kansas City.
Yeah, you're the second to last guy to take a defense, it looks like here. So
Yeah, I think this is a year
Get
you
them,
can wait on defenses. There's a lot of them that can put up points, but I kind of reached a little bit on a defense last year, and it didn't bite me because they actually ended up winning me a couple games. But I think consistency wise, you can wait a little bit on a defense. Like, don't be the first one in your draft to take a defense. I'm just gonna tell you that right now.
Mhm.
And then last round, I just took a kicker. So let's move on to Steve, who also had the 4th overall pick. Standard scoring 12-team league.
Yeah, I had the 4th overall pick, and I actually ended up getting Adrian Peterson with this 4th overall pick in the first round. Somebody took Eddie Lacy with the 3rd, so I was off and running. I'm pretty excited that anytime I can get Adrian Peterson. So if I can get him with the 4th pick, I'll take that every time around. I'm not sure you're going to be able to. You're going to be able to get him in your draft if you have the 4th pick. But,
would you say that you would take
excited
him
about that.
at number 4 all day?
All day. I would take Adrian Peterson
There you go.
at the 4th pick.
As everybody
so yeah,
turns off
what
the
I'm
podcast.
doing, I'm doing Yahoo, and I was just using Yahoo's rankings. So this is kind of, if you only have Yahoo's rankings in front of you, this is the way that
Okay.
it might go.
I like it.
And then I'll do ESPN. Yeah, I'll do ESPN next week. So that's just kind of the way I went. And then second round, I ended up with Alshon Jeffrey, which again I'm excited about. I really like Alshon Jeffrey a lot. If I was faced with Brandon Marshall, who went 1, 2, 3, 4 picks before Alshon Jeffrey did, if I had both of them and I had the option, then I would take Alshon Jeffrey anyway. So
Really?
I'm excited. Yeah, I am.
that high?
I would. Yeah, it sounds like you're on the other side of that.
Yeah, I
fence,
don't.
but I'm
The only
excited
reason I
to
say that
have
is
Alshon Jeffrey.
because from what I saw last year, Cutler just loves Brandon Marshall, and that's the only reason I say that. Not that Jeffrey, I think, will
That's
have
true.
a bad season by any means, but between the two of them, I just see, especially. Well, I mean, this is standard, but PPR, obviously you go Marshall, but yeah, I guess in a standard league, it's a little more of a toss up, to be honest, because receptions don't matter. But
Exactly,
I'd
and
still go
Alshon
Marshall,
Jeffrey
I guess.
finds the end zone.
Yeah, I guess I'd still go Marshall.
Yeah, and this is a league where it was 2 running back, 3 wide receivers. So I went wide receiver again in round 3, and ended up with Julio Jones, who seems like he's going to be healthy. He got cleared today to participate in training camp fully, so I don't have any worries about injuries with him going into the season. So
Yeah,
I'm okay with Julio Jones.
That's a guy going about a full round, maybe even a round and a half, depending. I mean, a 12-team league, going at least a full round later than last year. So that could be pretty good value at your 3rd pick.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And then I ended up with Frank Gore. We talked about how much we haven't liked Frank Gore, but I got stuck on running backs. So again, that kind of just hammers the point home that you might want to shore up your running backs a little bit earlier. I went running back instead of wide receiver, or I went wide receiver instead of running back in round 3, and I
Right.
probably could have went running back. So I ended up with Frank Gore though in round 4, and then Michael Floyd, who we talked about. I took a couple NFC West guys. In
I
the
love
5th
that.
round, I ended up with Michael Floyd. Yeah,
I
so
love that.
I think that's pretty good value, and that for sure shores up where I'm receiving core. I end up with Floyd, Julio Jones, and Alshon Jeffrey, and I'm pretty much set.
Yeah, I think those are 3 guys, top 15, maybe even top 12 wide receivers.
Yeah, so yeah, I was really excited to be able to get those guys. And then we ended up with the same quarterback, but I took my guy around later. I ended up with Andrew Luck in the 6th, which I'm wonderfully excited with. Cam Newton went 4 picks before me. I'm really not even sure who I would take if I had the option of Cam Newton or Andrew Luck, but I'm certainly excited to get Andrew Luck, and I would be excited to get Cam Newton.
That's tough. I think Luck does have more weapons. That's the one thing Cam does not have going for him is that he lost weapons. And he is coming off that injury. I think he's going to be okay with his ankle, but
so do I.
No weapons doesn't help his case.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm perfectly good with Andrew Luck, and then I went tight end round 7. Kyle Rudolph, the guy that was shortly mentioned that people are starting to hop on that bandwagon, so might not be able to get him in the 7th round for long, but Kyle Rudolph is a guy that I went with, and I'm confident that he's going to have a really good year. There's a lot of news coming out, and all of it's pointing in a positive direction, so I don't mind having Kyle Rudolph. And then we went ahead and had the same wide receiver, Golden Tate I took in round 8, so I don't mind having him as a backup to my strong receiving core. That kind of just solidifies how strong my receiving core is.
That is a really good receiving core.
Yeah. And then round 9, I ended up reading the news about Ben Tate and ended up with Terrence West in round 9, which I'm okay with as a backup running back. Again, I might, looking at the team, since I have such strong receivers and maybe not in the running back department, I might be up for a trade here as the season wore on with a wide receiver for running back type thing.
I actually think you might be okay running back wise, and I'll get to that in a second.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and I took Quan in the 11th. I love Anquan Bolden. I went under on 166, but I still think he has a candidacy to have a really strong year, and I'm excited about having Anquan Bolden. And then I went Chris Ivory in the 12th.
Yeah, that's why Chris Ivory in the 12th. People I think are forgetting that Chris Johnson's not going to be getting all the carries, and
yeah,
I don't even know if I can see him playing, getting the majority of carries, I should say.
Yeah, I'm avoiding Chris Johnson at all costs.
Yeah, if he's there and that late, I would take Chris Ivory every time.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I just think we're kind of on the same page here. It looks like that he's going to emerge as the starter eventually anyway, and especially since he's going to be my backup running back by the time my bye weeks come around, I would expect him to be a starter anyway. So getting him round 12 in a 12-team league, I'm pretty happy with as far as backup running backs go. And then 13, I went backup quarterback and ended up with Joe Flacco. I could have done better than that. I might have waited a bit long. Yeah, maybe might have been able to go Manziel. I was even thinking about Russell Wilson but he went in the 10th. I was thinking about it at that point.
Didn't pull the
trigger. I just didn't pull the trigger. And then round 14, I got, I think, excellent value where I got Steve Smith. So if I got my Flacco, Steve Smith, I got my bench receiver quarterback combination.
Looking at the 13th round, actually Manziel, he missed. You missed Manziel by 2 picks, but right after Flacco was Tannehill and McCown. I probably would have taken either of them over him.
Yeah. So I mean, I probably could have done better there. I would agree with you. I just saw Flacco and saw the strong arm.
Flacco and Eli are 2 guys that, in my opinion, might even be undraftable this year.
Yeah.
I'm so low on both of them. I'm tired of it.
So yeah, that certainly hurts my my strong value. I thought I got with Steve Smith in the 14th. But,
well, Steve Smith can still get catches.
Yeah, Steve Smith is he's a gamer, and again in the 14th round, you're kind of taking a flyer at that point anyway, because
he's the ageless wonder.
Yeah, exactly. And the only thing left is the 15th round, and that's all kicker all the time. So that's kind of 14th round is kind of where you take your flyer, and mine ended up being Steve Smith. So
yeah,
that's how That's how I round it out.
Flacco could throw 10 touchdowns and 12 interceptions, and Steve Smith could have 10 touchdowns.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
So
yeah, and it'll be long touchdowns too.
Yeah, nothing against Steve Smith. It's just I don't like Flacco. So, all right, well that's it for today. I guess next week we'll head back over to the AFC. We did East and South, so I guess we'll go over to the West. We'll go AFC West. And then we'll also do Sleeper Spotlight over under for AFC West and answer any questions you have. Like we said before, send all your questions, topics you want to hear us talk about, maybe different kind of leagues, different strategies maybe, or just suggestions you have for the show. You want to hear us you want to hear us fire Robot Bill? Let us know. Just email us primetime@nextlevelradioonline.com, or you can tweet us at NXT Level Radio with the hashtag PTFF. And also email us with your name for if you want to get in on this this free fantasy football league. And I think Steve and I were talking about possibly throwing in a little bit of prize to the winner as well. And if one of us, kick your asses, then we'll give a prize to the second or third place, something like that.
Yeah, we can take a T-shirt or something like that. Might as well, give up some kind of novelty prize.
We'll do something. We'll figure it out. I think the draft is, it's like 2 days before the season, I think. I got to look at my calendar here. It's September 2nd, Tuesday, September 2nd at like 8:30 Eastern time. So if you're on the West Coast, that's 5:30, but you should be home from work by then anyway. Listen to us live on Next Level Radio every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. You can also listen to the Next Level Showcast every Sunday normally at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Actually, this coming week, though, Sunday the 20... What's this Sunday? What's the date? 27th? The 27th. There will not be a showcast. It's actually going to be on a special night next week. It's going to be the night before our show, Tuesday the 29th at 7 o'clock. So make sure you tune in for that live from 7 to 10. And if you can't make it live, just subscribe on iTunes, Primetime Fantasy Football. Do a little search. We'll be the first one that pops up. And you can also search for Next Level Radio, also the first one that pops up. You can find old episodes of the showcast as well as a bunch of guest spotlights from different people in the entertainment industry. And then as always, make sure you check out nextlevelradioonline.com. You can find the link to Steve's blog there. I'm going to start also contributing some fantasy football articles to my blog. And if you don't have iTunes, you can stream us on there as well for all the shows and celebrity interviews and stuff like that. Steve, what do you have? I guess you're going to be posting a couple more articles on your blog this week?
Yeah, I'll be recapping. I'm up to the first. I have the first three articles up on the old blog so far. So tomorrow I'll come up with the fourth one, which I guess is what we did last week. And then on Friday is when this episode will go up, because all the YouTube video will be up and will be up on iTunes by the time Friday rolls around. So.
Yeah.
And I do some unique content as well as my blog. So I'm an aspiring sports writer. So
it's like your own little column.
Yeah, exactly. So I write about some sports topics as well. So feel free to surf around, and I'll have another unique article going up sometime this week as well. So
all right,
let me know what you think.
Yeah, and follow Steve on Twitter at srichards31. Follow me on Twitter at AdamNextLevel. And then follow the Next Level Radio on Twitter at NXT Level Radio. But that wraps it up. We will see you next week. Have a good one.
Yeah.